Okay, so have you heard about those Epstein files everyone's buzzing about?
Yeah, it's like the documents everyone wants to see, but nobody seems to have the full story.
Exactly. What's the deal with all that secrecy, right? Like, what's so explosive in those pages that they're being kept locked up so tight?
It's a real mystery.
Well, consider this deep dive your shortcut to understanding the whole thing, the key players, the theories, the whole 9 yards. Welcome to the Journeyman Podcast, episode 46.
46 already.
Time flies.
It really does.
All right, so today we're going to cut through the noise surrounding the Epstein files, all right? We're going to look at what we know from recent discussions, available documents, particularly some really interesting stuff from a YouTube transcript, Elon Musk on the Russell Brand channel.
Yeah, that was a fascinating conversation.
Super interesting. If you want to check out that original material, we've got a link for you in the description.
Definitely worth a watch.
So our mission today, what we're really aiming for, is to give you that crucial understanding of who's been named, what the main theories are about why we haven't seen everything, and what this whole thing tells us about power and trust and how information flows,
It's a pretty important conversation to be having.
Yeah. We want to arm you with some clarity, maybe give you a few aha moments along the way, but without overwhelming you, just the good stuff.
Just the essentials.
Exactly. And hey, before we jump in, if you love deep dives like this, hit that like button and subscribe to the Journeyman Podcast. It really helps us out. All right, let's dive right in. So we know some documents have been released, right?
Yeah, initially by the FBI. A few hundred pages, I think.
Right, a few hundred pages. That's what the transcript mentions, too. But what's interesting is that this was before a whistleblower stepped up.
Oh, that's right. Suggesting there were way more documents being kept under wraps somewhere else.
Right, specifically within the Southern District of New York. And that's where Attorney General Pam Bondi comes into the picture.
Yeah, she made a pretty strong statement, demanded everything be released.
Friday at 8 a.m., no less.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you think, right? Like, why this initial trickle of information? And then needing the Attorney General to basically force the issue to get the full picture.
It does raise some questions about transparency. The fact that it took a whistleblower suggests maybe there was some pushback, internal resistance perhaps, or even maybe a deliberate strategy to carefully control what got out there.
And Bondi's insistence on everything, it kind of implies that she suspected that initial release wasn't the whole story.
Right, like the tip of the iceberg kind of thing.
And this leads us to the really big question, the one that's hanging over all of this. Why the holdup? What's so sensitive that it has to be kept secret?
Yeah, what could be so bad?
Well, the stuff we've been looking at offers some pretty fascinating answers, even if they're just theories, One big one, probably no surprise, revolves around powerful people being named. In the YouTube transcript, Elon Musk mentions Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Reid Hoffman as, quote, EPSTEIN clients.
And known FC clients. And of course, these are people with a ton of influence, political and economic.
Yeah, heavy hitters.
And what's really interesting is how directly Musk names them. It immediately gets people speculating about their connection to Epstein.
For sure. And the transcript actually touches on that ambiguity. What does EPSTEIN client even mean? Is it just like they knew him, went to some parties, or does it mean something deeper, something maybe more incriminating? That uncertainty, that's what really fuels the public's interest, I think, and the concern.
Yeah, I think you're right. It leaves a lot to the imagination.
And Musk doesn't stop there, right?
Yeah.
He brings up this point about Reid Hoffman wanting to, destroy Trump. And he wonders if that could be tied to worries about this Epstein list becoming public.
That adds a whole other layer to it, doesn't it?
It's like, if this list gets out, could it shake things up politically? Could it damage reputations?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It paints a picture of powerful people having a vested interest in keeping this stuff under wraps, potentially to protect themselves.
So basically, Musk is suggesting that political motivations, or even just trying to avoid scandals, could be major factors behind why these files are still hidden.
It's definitely a possibility. The idea that the fallout from a full release could be huge.
Huge, politically explosive.
Yeah.
Impacting not just individuals, but entire networks of power.
Absolutely. And then you've got Candice Owens' perspective, which brings in a whole different angle to this.
Right, a totally different angle. Her theory, at least how it's discussed in the transcript, is that this Epstein list is somehow connected to Mossad and Israeli activity.
That's a pretty big claim.
It is. The idea is that Epstein was working in some way for Israel's interests. And that's why the list will stay hidden, because it would implicate Israel.
So how does this theory play into the reasons behind the secrecy? How does it add to our understanding?
Well, it's a major claim for sure, and it highlights just how much suspicion there is and how many different theories are swirling around trying to make sense of this secrecy. Owens's argument is built on this idea that anything that could hurt Israel's image or their political goals is going to be kept out of the public eye.
So she's basically bringing a geopolitical element into the Epstein story. It's not just domestic anymore, it's international.
Right. It suggests that the reasons for keeping this quiet might go way beyond just what's happening in the U.S.
Yeah.
And what makes this theory powerful, even without solid proof, is that there's already this underlying feeling that there are powerful forces at work behind the scenes, you know, hidden hands shaping things.
Yeah, it plays into that idea that there's always more going on than meets the eye.
And even beyond specific people or even countries, there's this theme that keeps popping up in these sources,
Mm,
that the Epstein list has stuff that could completely disrupt the power structure as we know it. Like, the truth is so dangerous to the way things are that those in power will do anything to keep it quiet.
It speaks to a real lack of trust in the established order. The belief that this isn't just about individual bad behavior, but that it exposes something rotten at the core of how power works.
And it's hard to ignore the role institutions like the FBI play in all this. The fact that they initially released only a small part of the documents and that someone had to blow the whistle to reveal there was more, it definitely raises some red flags.
Totally. Attorney General Bondi even expressed frustration with how they handled it. Makes you wonder if there was some level of obstruction going on, maybe even within these institutions themselves.
And the transcript actually addresses this. The speaker even questions whether people within these organizations are even following orders. It's like, are there people inside trying to protect certain interests instead of being transparent and giving the public what they deserve to know?
That's a scary thought. And the fact that there were way more documents than what was initially released just adds fuel to that fire.
Absolutely. So let's come back to the people Musk specifically named. Bill Gates and Reid Hoffman as EPSTEIN clients, and later he includes Bill Clinton in that list of known FC clients.
Yeah, those are some pretty big names. And with EPSTEIN client being such a vague term, it makes you wonder why Musk would single them out.
Right. Is he hinting at something? Or is there another reason he's bringing them up?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think the ambiguity of EPSTEIN client is key here. Musk's words definitely draw attention to those people, but they don't really clarify what their involvement with Epstein actually was.
So it could be something minor, or it could be something more serious.
Exactly. But because Musk has such a big platform and he's known for being pretty direct, these statements carry a lot of weight.
They definitely add fuel to the fire. People are going to want answers.
For sure. And then there's Candice Owens' theory about Israel being involved. She even goes as far as to say that Epstein was a marionette of Israel's interests.
That's a pretty strong statement.
It is. And she basically concludes that because of the potential implications for Israel, this list will never be made public.
So how does that tie into the reasons for the secrecy? What does that tell us?
Well, it offers a very specific, although controversial, explanation for why there's so much secrecy around these files. By saying Epstein was working for Israel, Owen suggests that releasing the list would have huge geopolitical consequences.
Way bigger than any pressure for transparency here in the U.S.
Exactly. It touches on these existing sensitivities about international relations and the influence of foreign powers.
It's interesting how, as we've been going through this information, there's this constant theme of distrust. Distrust in the mainstream media and the justice system and how they've handled this whole Epstein situation.
It's palpable. The transcript really captures that feeling that both could be compromised by powerful interests.
Yeah, there's a lot of skepticism. It's like people feel the very institutions that are supposed to hold powerful people accountable are actually being manipulated or influenced themselves.
And the fact that the FBI initially held back documents just reinforces that distrust.
For sure. It's like people are saying, we can't trust the official story. And that's why they're looking for information from other sources, you know?
Yeah.
Trying to get around what they see as a controlled narrative. It's almost like a real-life thriller unfolding. All these players, hidden agendas.
It's a compelling narrative. And it explains the popularity of platforms like the Russell Brand channel on YouTube and Rumble. That's where these conversations are happening.
It's because people want information that goes beyond what they're getting from the mainstream. They're doing their own research, coming to their own conclusions. Like they're saying, we're not just going to blindly trust the usual gatekeepers anymore.
There's definitely a shift happening in how people consume and process information.
It's a fascinating time, but it's also a little unsettling. All this secrecy surrounding the Epstein files, the different theories trying to explain it, and this erosion of trust in institutions.
Hmm.
It's like we're at a point where people are really starting to question authority and demand transparency.
I think you're right. The fact that people are still demanding the full release of this list, it shows that there's a deep desire for accountability.
People are rejecting the idea that powerful individuals can operate above the law and beyond scrutiny,
It's a fight for transparency and justice.
and it's not over yet. So in this deep dive, we've uncovered a lot. We've learned about that initial FBI document release and how Attorney General Pam Bondi pushed hard for everything to be made public. You now know about the people Elon Musk named: Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Reid Hoffman. And we talked about the big questions surrounding those vague terms like EP and client. We explored Candice Owens' theory about possible Israeli involvement, and we discussed that broader concern: are powerful people influencing how this information is being released? You've seen how this whole situation has really shaken people's trust in mainstream media and the justice system,
It's definitely highlighted some systemic issues.
and it's led to the rise of alternative platforms like the Russell Brand channel on YouTube and Rumble. Those are becoming important spaces for these discussions.
For sure. People are finding new ways to connect and share information.
So hopefully this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of what's going on. It's a complex story with lots of moving parts and different perspectives. And if you want to dig deeper, we really encourage you to check out the Russell Brand channel on YouTube. The link is in the description. See the original discussion for yourself, and maybe even subscribe to their content. It's worth considering. If the complete truth about the Epstein files never comes out, what does that say about power? What does it say about the barriers to transparency in our world? It's a question that deserves some serious thought.
It definitely does.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on the Journeyman podcast. If you found this exploration valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth analyses. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.